Ron, always a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate you joining us again. How are you?
Thanks, man. Getting cold here in Maine.
I got to start by talking about this because this is even blowing my mind. Mike Johnson says, quote, to CNN that releasing this alleged behaviors of Matt Gaetz in this report, releasing it, it's not relevant, he said. And I want to read one of your tweets because I think it's brilliant. You said, so the House would release the ethics report on Gaetz if he was still a member, but since he's been nominated to be the chief law enforcement officer for the U.S. with control of every federal law enforcement agency, investigation, and case, they'll hide the report. Makes sense. I think it's a great tweet. This is crazy, Ron.
It's really nuts. I mean, when you think about how this played out, because this report was supposed to be released today, and if Trump had not nominated Gaetz to be the Attorney General of the United States, it would have been. But since he nominated him, and then Gaetz says, knowing that this report's coming out and this report's going to hurt him in becoming Attorney General, he resigns. So, because technically the rules in the House are, if you're no longer if you resign, if you're being investigated and you just resign and you say, okay, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, then they leave you alone. That's kind of like the theory behind it. It's really to encourage people to resign. When you know you're screwed, don't make us go through this whole process of expelling you. Just do the right thing and resign, and we won't release the report to the public. So it's kind of like it makes a little sense, but not in this scenario where you have U.S. senators, Republicans, that are out there going, what? We need this report. We need to vet this guy. We have to vote on this, and then we have to stand for re-election and stand behind that vote. And you're making us do this blind. And then, so what if we vote for this guy, and then 6 months from now, this report gets leaked by a staffer, and then we look like idiots? So John Cornyn, the Republican from Texas, has said, well, they're going to try and subpoena the report, but then that could create a constitutional crisis if the House refuses to honor the subpoena. It goes to the Supreme Court. I mean, and then you have Mike Rounds, who's the Republican chair of the Senate Intel Committee, said, look, we're going to get this report one way or the other. So I think that the situation is this. A lot of these Republican senators don't like Gaetz. They think this is a crazy pick, and they want to be able to justify voting against him and having that report and standing up to Trump. But having that report would give them some cover, some ability. They could say, look, I want to give Trump his nominees, but I can't ignore this, having sex with a 17-year-old girl.
I want to ask you about that, because you're obviously an attorney, so I wanted to ask you, if in fact there's evidence in this report, and you have your sources, I have mine, I've heard there's overwhelming evidence that he did have sex with this underage girl and he paid her on a Venmo app. If in fact there's all this evidence, then why hasn't there been a criminal complaint, and why hasn't this gone to law enforcement?
I think that it did go to law enforcement, and U.S. Attorney's Office under Joe Biden, determined that there wasn't enough evidence under Merrick Garland. So that, this could be another situation where, like January 6th, where Merrick Garland didn't think it merited a special counsel. And then, the House puts out the January 6th report. The public reads it and goes, what the hell are you doing? And then he appoints a special counsel. This could be another situation just like that, where this report comes out and we're all going, why the hell wasn't this prosecuted? Now, I know the excuse was that Joel Greenberg is, the linchpin, the key witness, his wingman behind all this. And he has obviously no credibility. He's lied multiple times in his proffers, and he's got a lot to gain by lying to get time off his sentence. But so if the case rises and falls on him, then I agree, you don't have a criminal case. But if there's all this other evidence where you don't even really need Joel Greenberg, compare it to like the Trump prosecution with involving Michael Cohen. Now, Michael Cohen didn't have a whole lot of credibility. I mean, he's admitted that he lied many times in the past, but that case didn't solely rely on Michael Cohen's credibility. There was a lot of other evidence. So, that we'll see. This could be another humiliation for Merrick Garland if this report does come out and it's really bad.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it certainly appears to me the only reason why Matt Gaetz did this is maybe not even because he believes he could actually be the attorney general, is so that this report didn't come out. And maybe, Donald Trump said, all right, well, if it does turn out that you're my attorney general, you're going to be a yes man to me. I'm doing you this favor. And it's like vice versa, give and take. Do you feel like that's why this whole thing went down to begin with?
Well, I think Gaetz is much worse than a yes man. Because I think that Gaetz, sure, there's some things that Donald Trump wants his attorney general to do. And there's going to be things that are going to come up in the future that he's going to want him to do that haven't even happened yet, that are unethical and shady. Right. So I think that typically the attorney general comes from where do attorney generals come from? They come from big law firms in DC, New York, LA. They've come up through the ranks. They've been U.S. attorneys. They've been elected officials. They have this incredibly impressive resume. You're with a lot of respect, but you're not going to get a guy like that to do the kinds of things that Trump wants his next attorney general to do. He doesn't want a Bill Barr. He doesn't want a Jeff Sessions. He wants a guy like Matt Gaetz. And so why I say he's going to be worse than a yes man is because Matt Gaetz has his own agenda besides Trump's. And I think Gaetz is going to be doing a million terrible things in that position that Trump never even thought about.
That's a good point. I agree with you on that. So now let me ask you this. What happens here? Do you believe that Matt Gaetz ever becomes the attorney general? What do you see happening here in the future?
I think no. I think this is going to be one of these situations where, look, throughout this presidency and throughout the previous Trump presidency, we have had to rely on establishment Republicans, a few non-MAGA Republicans in the House and Senate, to stand up and oppose Trump, right? We've needed that on impeachment. We've needed that on different bills, so many different things. And in 2017, we had a lot more of those people willing to do that than we do now, right? A lot of them were voted out of office. 10 House Republicans voted to impeach him last time. 8 are gone. They've all been Kinzinger, Cheney. They've all been voted out, kicked out. And so, there's a tiny handful of people that are left now. There's not many. That's the bad news. The good news is the Republicans only have a 3-seat majority in the Senate, and they have 4, maybe 5 in the House. So it only takes a few. So I think Gaetz is so toxic and has such a terrible background and has made so many enemies in the Senate that I don't think he's going to get through. But the problem is Trump will probably end up appointing someone who will do just as bad of stuff, but maybe doesn't have the background that Gaetz has.
I agree. Ron, you spent a lot of years living in Florida. The rumors are that Matt Gaetz wants to be the next governor of Florida. You think that ever happens?
Yeah, I kicked this around with an Orlando Sentinel reporter yesterday. We were talking, who's really well connected to Tallahassee for decades. And at first, when we started the conversation, that was my theory too. That look, Gaetz is fine. This gives him an out. Even if he gets rejected, right, then he becomes a MAGA martyr. And there's nothing greater than a martyr. Like, look at Steve Bannon, Roger Stone, Michael Flynn. In MAGA world, when the deep state goes after you and prosecutes you and stuff, and that's the best street cred you can have as MAGA, right? So what better way for Gaetz to kick off his campaign for governor in 2026 than go through this bloody hearing, get rejected by rhino Republicans, and say, I'm the man, stand up behind me. I'm the rebel. I'm the bad guy. It's just set up so perfectly for him to do that. So when I first talked to this Orlando Sentinel reporter about it, at first he thought, no, he didn't really see that it was. But then the more we talked it through, he's like, you know what? Maybe you're right.
It makes sense. It makes absolute sense. Look at all the MAGA martyrs, for lack of a better term, that you use. And you're right. They're seen from the MAGA world as heroes, yet they're the same people that call Democrats pedophiles, Joe Biden is sniffing hair, so on and so forth. Yet you have a guy who allegedly had sex with an underage girl and has been doing drugs. But it's interesting how a guy like Mike Johnson is willing to put all that to the side. That's what's so mesmerizing to me, right? Devout Christian, no porn. You know, we know the whole app that he has with his son, which is beyond weird to begin with, monitoring your son's porn that he watches. But yet when it comes to possibly having sex with an underage girl and doing drugs and the most important job as an attorney, arguably on the planet, he's just willing to push that all to the side. And he uses the term, it's not relevant. I mean, it's laughable, Ron. It's laughable and it's embarrassing.
It's laughable. And when you think about the way the House works, right? The Speaker is not supposed to have any authority over the Ethics Committee. It's the only committee that in the entire House that the Speaker is not supposed to mess with, because it's supposed to be totally bipartisan, because this is the committee they have one job: investigate each other, right? And so that committee, you can't have people like Jim Jordan, you can't have people like that, AOC even, on that committee. You put the members in there that are the most level-headed, the most calm, that are the most bipartisan, and who work well with each other, right? And the Speaker is not supposed to get involved in any way. They're not supposed to direct them to do or not do anything at all. And when he was first asked about this last week before Gaetz was nominated, he was asked about this on Gabbard, I think, or somebody else. He said, no, it was about Gaetz. He said, I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not telling them what to do. If they want to, this was before Gaetz was nominated, though. He was just asked about what he said, I'm going to stay out of it. I'm going to stay completely out of it. That was just last week. Then Gaetz gets nominated, and now he's changed his story.
Yeah.
He went from last week saying he wouldn't tell them one way or the other what to do. Now he's saying he is going to he used this word, strongly encourage them not to release it. Why? What changed? What changed is Donald Trump got involved.